Hey everyone, Vincenzo Calla here. Welcome to episode 10 of Let's Discuss Politics. Today, I'm glad to be joined by the Conservative MP for Regina, Qu'Appelle, and the former leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, the Honourable Andrew Scheer. Andrew was born and raised in Ontario and moved to Saskatchewan to build his family and career. Andrew was first elected as the Conservative Member of Parliament for Regina, Qu'Appelle in 2004 and has been elected 6 times since then. In 2011, he became the 35th Speaker of the House of Commons, and in 2017, he was elected by Conservative members to be their leader and served until 2020, having run for Prime Minister in 2019. Before the election, Andrew served as the opposition critic for infrastructure. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
We'll start with first segment, which is called Andrew's Story, where we'll talk about your political history and how you got here. So the first question is, when did you first get involved in politics?
Well, I was actively involved in the '99 Ontario provincial campaign. I was interested in politics long before that, but that was the first campaign where I really helped out, got involved, volunteered on a number of different campaigns. I was part of a youth team that traveled across Ontario helping Conservative candidates in that election. And I guess I would have been about 20 years old at the time, but long-time fan, long-time student of history. Before that, was always following what was going on. Always felt like I had a passion for politics.
Well, that's really cool. I mean, obviously, elections are a good time to get involved in politics, especially if you like to pay attention and either get involved in a campaign or just watch it from the sidelines. Or it's just a really good time that a lot of people get involved, especially me. That's how I first got involved in politics. I just watched the news in the 2014 provincial election in Ontario, and that's how I got my start paying attention. So the second question is, why did you decide to run for the position you hold, which is the MP for Regina, Qu'Appelle?
Well, as you mentioned in the introduction, I moved to Saskatchewan in 2003. I met my wife. She's from Regina. She was doing her electives at the University of Ottawa, and I followed her when she moved back to Saskatchewan. I came out with her. Instantly fell in love with the province. I love Saskatchewan, love my home city of Regina and all the communities around it. And I was helping to organize, you may remember back in 2003, 2004, the big conversation was around uniting the right. You know, we had two different right of center parties for many years. That was leading to liberal victories. So there was an initiative to join the two parties. And I came from the Reform and the Canadian Alliance side of the equation, and I wanted to help out. I saw the wisdom in putting aside some of the differences that sometimes separate Conservatives and focusing on all the very many things that we agree on, and got behind that movement. So I was helping to organize the various campaigns to unite the right. And then I was involved in a leadership race back in 2003. I was supporting Stephen Harper when he was running for leader of the newly merged Conservative Party. So I had kind of got right into the mix in terms of the on-the-ground grassroots organization type of thing. And so when they opened up nominations for the Saskatchewan ridings in the 2004 election, I thought to myself, well, I've had a role in supporting the merger in this area. I've got to meet lots of people in terms of the leadership race, and I thought, well, I'm going to put my name forward and offer myself to the members to carry the banner for the new Conservative Party in this riding. And I was so grateful. The members of the Regina Qu'Appelle Electoral District Association voted for me to be their candidate, and ever since then, it's just been fantastic.
And the rest is history, as many say.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you're serving here as the MP for Regina, Qu'Appelle. Many years later, still there, fighting for what's right in the House. So we're going to go into the next segment, which is called Serving as an Elected Official, where we'll talk about your experiences and achievements as an elected official. So the first question is, what is your favorite part about serving your community and the people of your riding as an elected official?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really the people. One of the best things about my job is every day is different. Yesterday I had a Zoom call with representatives of the fertilizer industry. They're very concerned that the new regulations the Liberal government's imposing is going to drive up the cost of fertilizer, really going to impact farmers and their ability to grow crops and be able to make a living. That's a big policy issue that's going to affect thousands and thousands of people in my riding and throughout Saskatchewan. And then later on in the day, I met with constituents who had a variety of issues with the federal government. Some Some are focused on immigration, some are focused on the Canada Pension Plan, some about the CERB and what's going to come next, so to speak. So every day is a little bit different, and I get to learn so much about different policy areas. I also get to meet different people who are, involved in any number of things, whether it's starting a business or trying to help refugees coming to this country. So the part I enjoy most about my job is how variable it is, how much variety is in my job. In addition to what you might see on TV with giving speeches in the House of Commons, which is very special, voting, and all the parliamentary side, there's so many things in my home constituency that keep me engaged, that present some challenges I've got to kind of think about how best to solve. So the variety and the real depth of experience I get to have representing this riding is definitely one of the big pluses of serving in this capacity.
Well, especially as you mentioned, serving the people, and especially when people come to you with issues in Saskatchewan and you bring them to Ottawa when the House resumes, obviously, the House will resume eventually. So when that happens, you get to bring them forward and bring their concerns and just really serve them. And that's what the job of an MP is.
And one of the things I've really realized over the course of my career is that there are a lot of very powerful interests in this country. There are a lot of very well-connected industry groups and businesses, and they love big government. They love to come to Ottawa and try to get the government to pass a rule or a change in regulation that benefits them and hurts their competitors. And one of the comments I hear the most from some business groups is, well, we all believe in the free market, but, and then they want a special favor or a special rule. And you see this, it's not just one side. In Ottawa, there's a huge industry of government relations and lobbyists. And when I'm home in Regina, I meet with people. I meet with so many people who don't have an industry group representing them. They don't have well-paid lobbyists fighting for a special deal. They just want good government. They just want, in most cases, they just want to be left alone to be able to compete, to start up a business and offer a service or a product. And most of the time, they just want government to remove a stupid rule or a barrier that's preventing them from living out their dream or being successful. And I contrast that with what goes on in Ottawa, where you have these high-powered, very well-connected lobbyists who are usually looking for government to do more things to either benefit them or, as I said, to hurt their competitors. So I like to believe, I think it's important for every member of Parliament to remember that we've got to be that voice for the people who don't have those connections, who don't come together and chip in money to hire a lobbyist in Ottawa. And that's our job, is to represent them and to keep their concerns and their issues and their perspective always top of mind every time we're talking about a policy change or a new piece of legislation.
Well, strong words for sure, and definitely strong things that all members of Parliament must remember once they step through those doors of the chamber and start to do whatever they need to do, whatever's on topic of that day in the House of Commons. So we're going to go into the next question, which is, what is your favorite achievement as an elected official?
Wow, that's a tough question. I've been involved in many different initiatives over the course of my career on some big stuff. Back in when the Conservative Party in government, a lot of the efforts I threw myself behind were in keeping taxes low, not expanding the scope of government, and not increasing government reach on things. So some of those successes you'll never read about, because sometimes we were successful in convincing our own government not to do things, not to expand a government program, or not to do anything that would lead to higher taxes. Because of that work, we didn't. But of course, there's no news about that, because we just prevented the government from doing something. As leader, I was definitely very proud of the fact that I was able to keep the party together. The job number one for any leader of the Conservative Party is keeping all the various kinds of Conservatives united under one tent, and we by and large were very successful with that. And locally, there's a local project I was very, very involved in, and extremely proud of being able to see it to conclusion. completion. If you're familiar with the geography around Regina, to the east of Regina in my riding, there are several commuter towns with very, very high growth rates. And those communities are growing. More and more families are moving out there. And along the number one highway, there were no on-ramps to get onto the highway from those communities. So motorists, they're coming into Regina in rush hour, they'd have to turn to the left across oncoming traffic to come into the city. And every year, tragically, in the winter, there were deaths and horrible accidents. And a group of local officials came together to build some overpasses. And I was successful in getting federal funding for that. And we were able to build some on and off ramps that have literally saved lives. And that's something that's very special to me, because without that federal funding, it might not have happened. And we were able to do something that dramatically improved the quality of life of people living in those communities.
Really cool for sure. And just there's the big things that obviously we see on TV, and then there's the smaller things that make just such a huge difference. Even though people may not think of it, it just creates a huge difference, just like the on-ramps and the highway improvements, like you mentioned. So So we're going to go into the last segment, which is called Politics Are All Around Us, where we'll talk about the world of politics around us. So the first question is, who is or who was another politician that inspires you?
Well, for me, I really look at Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. Ronald Reagan, because he was able to completely rebrand conservatism as this positive thing. A lot of the times, the mainstream media and the left try to portray conservatives as always being against things, which generally conservatives don't want new government programs, don't want new taxes, don't want new interference in our lives. So it's very easy for the left and for their friends in the media to portray that as something negative. Reagan was able to have this very optimistic and hopeful message that was based on rock solid conservative principles of individual freedom and limited government. He was able to present it in a way that really won people over. He really attracted a whole new tranche of voters who may never voted for a right of center party before because of that portrayal. But in terms of real meaningful change, Margaret Thatcher really did set the bar very high. And I believe the biggest testament to the effectiveness of a government is, are future governments able to undo what you did? And when you look at Thatcher, how she was able to transform the British economy, get the government out of so many different spheres, really grow the private sector and the free market principles that stood the test of time. When the Labour government came in, they didn't undo the things that she did, either because they saw that it worked or that the public just wouldn't stand for it. And so for that kind of transformative change, Thatcher certainly stands out in that regard.
Well, that's definitely one of my favorite areas to read about and study and all that sort of thing. It was definitely a very interesting time in the world at that time, and having the world leaders on such a, I guess if you could call it, such on a level of agreement was just so interesting to watch, and something that probably won't happen ever again, really. So
and I think it's a challenge for conservative governments, both federal and provincial, to say, okay, eventually governments get voted out, and sometimes that can take a long time, sometimes a short time. But I sometimes challenge some of my colleagues who have served in government or are currently in government at federal or provincial level to say, like, what are you doing that's really transformative? Are you just kind of marking time? Are you just doing no further harm? Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes some politicians feel that's enough, that the NDP in Saskatchewan, for example, are doing so bad that just getting rid of the NDP is a huge deal. In Alberta, they've gone through different changes there. Ontario had government for a period of time, and then a long stint with the Liberals, with Indian Kathleen Wynne. Now the Conservatives are back in. So really, just to say, okay, like, what are you going to do with your time there? Are you going to make some of those transformative changes that a future Liberal government or a future NDP government will never touch, because you made some fundamental changes that people will really appreciate and really see and will support that change being maintained, or will a future government come in and just undo everything that you've done because you haven't really made those transformative changes? That's something I think we all have to, as conservative politicians, be aware of and challenge each other when either at the federal or provincial level.
It definitely is a very interesting thing that even most parties, the parties in power need to think about, especially as just reflection. So we're going to go over the last question quickly. So the last question is, what do you think is an issue that needs to be focused on more?
Right now, it's inflation. When you look at what Justin Trudeau's done with our money, the Bank of Canada has been printing. They started off printing $5 billion of new currency, either printing or creating digitally out of thin air, creating $5 billion every week from the start of the pandemic. Now they've tapered that off a little bit. It's not quite $5 billion a week, but the last time I checked, it was $3 billion a week. That's brand new money. That's new currency that's not reflective of any real economic growth. In fact, quite the opposite. We've had an economy that has shrunk because of COVID and a lot of lost production in a lot of areas. But the government's created new money. So we're seeing it. We're seeing it at the gas pumps. We're seeing it at the grocery stores. We're seeing it with people's purchasing power of their dollar. Everything's getting more expensive because there are more dollars chasing fewer goods. And this artificial inflation that the Bank of Canada has created is directly linked to Justin Trudeau's massive spending problem. And unfortunately, we had a 36 or 37-day election campaign where the mainstream media really didn't focus on this a lot. They were often, focused on other issues. But I hear it all the time from friends and neighbors and people who are commenting on, geez, I just got home from the grocery store and you can't believe what I paid for a thing of peanut butter or a box of meat. It's the prices are going up. And when you look at who's benefiting, the wealthy and well-connected in this country have benefited from all this money. When new money is created by a central bank out of thin air, the big winners are the people who get the money first because prices haven't gone up yet. And so when you look at the asset bubble that's happened, you look at some real estate markets that have just exploded, look at bank shares, the financial sector has done very well over the last year and a bit. They're all big, big, big winners. But for people and hardworking Canadians who depend on that paycheck, whose wages have gone up, now that the prices are starting to rise, we're all we're feeling the pinch from that because you're going into the grocery store now, you're paying those prices, your wages haven't kept up. There's a whole sector of our society that have been big, big winners because they got the new money first, and you're seeing that. You're seeing massive profits at banks. So inflation and the monetary policy of this government is a bit of a sleeper issue that didn't get enough attention during the campaign. And it's one of the things I'm hoping I can do in the next few weeks and months is to get more awareness about what's going on and get people to know that it's Trudeau's deficits that's causing the inflation.
Well, definitely a big issue for sure, and a big issue facing all Canadians, no matter what walk of life Canadians are coming from. It's definitely affecting them. So that is all for today. Thanks, Andrew, for joining me. If you liked today's interview, make sure to check out my other interview with Andrew for Top 5 and 5. If you're watching this at the time of the premiere, it's coming out on Friday. So to stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at VC Productions 25. Check out my website at VincenzoCalla.com and make sure to like, subscribe, and choose to get notifications here on YouTube. Let's Discuss Politics is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.